So once we verify that we're recording on the cameras, we'll go ahead and start. I'm sorry? Cool. I'd like to call this meeting, the Clay County Commission, to order. We will begin with our invocation. Mr. Administrator, when you are prepared, please proceed.
Thank you. Pray with me. Father, we're grateful for this day in Clay County, Missouri. We're grateful, Father, for your presence in our lives and your presence in this place. Be with us as we deliberate and go about the business of this fine county. We ask this in Jesus' blessed name. Amen.
Please rise for the pledge. Thank you. Excuse me. Please call the roll.
Here.
Here.
Here. That brings us to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Motion has been made for the adoption of the agenda. Are there any amendments? And I note that there are two items that were requested by staff to be put on the agenda. Is there a motion related to either one or both of those two requests?
I move that we add 2182 and 2021-87 to this evening's agenda.
And that would be on the regular agenda?
On to the regular agenda.
Very good. Motion has been made for the placement of 2021-82 and 2021-87 onto tonight's regular agenda. Those items are being placed, or the proposal to put those on the agenda are being done. We do that when there is a timeliness or some other pressing issue that did not allow us to go through our prior process. Can anyone from staff speak to the necessity for us dealing with these tonight rather than in the formal in the formal course of doing business?
Commissioner, the reason for this request is both of these issues on this request had to do with calendar timing. They are both somewhat tied to the change of the month, April 1st. And they were financially in our benefit if we were to react to these, so that's why they were placed on the agenda, requested to be placed on the agenda.
Yeah, that was my understanding, was that to wait would in fact cost the taxpayer some monies, and obviously we want to do our best to make sure that we are responsible with the taxpayers' money. With that, is there discussion on the amendment to place those two items on the agenda? Is there anything from Commissioner Thompson?
No, thank you.
Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this issue? Seeing none. Commissioner Carpenter, you can make any closing comments and then close.
Thank you. I close.
Please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. We will be adding, go ahead and jot these in there. We will be adding 2021-82 and 2021-87. And they will, of course, be taken up as separate issues on our regular agenda. That brings us back to the underlying motion for the approval of the agenda, now the agenda as amended. Are there any further alterations, changes, additions, or deletions from tonight's agenda? Seeing none, it is Commissioner Thompson's motion. You're free to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
The agenda has been approved as amended. Excuse me. That brings us to the meeting's schedule. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, as it states on the agenda, the next meeting scheduled is a commission work session scheduled for Thursday, April the 8th. And as it says on the agenda, at 9 a.m., I would add a caveat that's due to some potential commission business that might need to be changed to 10. So I would say it would start no earlier than 9 and no later than 10, and that will be noticed if it's changed at all. We'll make sure that the change of time is noticed.
Very well. Thank you very much. That brings us to honorary resolutions. There are none. Discussion items, there are no discussion items listed on this evening's agenda. Public hearings, once again, there are none listed. That brings us to the consent agenda. The consent agenda, for those who might be new to this, is the agenda of items that were heard at our last meeting. They were seen to be as non-controversial, and they required unanimous support to be voted on a second time as a group. Any commissioner may feel free to request that an item be removed from the consent agenda, where it will be considered on the regular agenda. That being said, is there a motion related to tonight's consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as printed.
Motion has been made for the approval of the consent agenda as printed. Discussion? Commissioner Carpenter?
Just that, I thought we had pretty good discussions on each of these items last week. Nothing certainly in the intervening week has occurred to me that would remove, have me remove any of the items. So I'm happy to move forward with the agenda as it currently is.
Very good. Is there any other discussion on the approval of the consent agenda as published? Seeing none, we will, included in this, in the consent agenda tonight is 2021 Ordinance 19, which is related to Hannah's Law, which is a piece of legislation that I've worked on, and certainly Commissioner Carpenter has worked on in Jefferson City. That was, again, enjoyed unanimous support from the commission. After we take this vote, we will break for a few moments and present a certificate to Hannah's family and give them a moment to kind of accept our congratulations on their ability to work through this. So with that, if there's no further discussion, please call the roll.
Yes?
Yes.
The consent agenda has been passed. With that, I would ask the girl to come forward, and we will present you with a signed copy of the ordinance. Usually go with the flags.
First, I can take a picture and then I can send it to you, if that's all right. Okay? I'm gonna take one far away and then I'm gonna move up a little bit, so smile, smize. It's called smizing now. All right, there we go. I'll make sure to send it. Thanks, Will.
All right, that moves us, that moves us on to tonight's regular agenda. The first item on our agenda is 2021-83. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, 2021-83 is a resolution to transfer funds from one fund into another and that is to simply give us funds in the proper account in order to pay the premium that we are about to pay for our 2022 insurance through Travelers.
And if I remember correctly, this is something that we heard at our last meeting, so this was something that we had questioned our insurance carrier about, and he was able to give us the answers we needed to put it on today's agenda.
Correct.
Is there a motion on 2021-83?
I move that we approve 2021-83.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2021-83. Discussion? Commissioner Thompson?
No, thank you.
Any comments from anyone in the public? Seeing none. Commissioner Carpenter, you're free to close.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I would just say it was good to resolve the question as to the minor discrepancy in cost, and would reiterate, I think we got some pretty good news on this discussion item last week, that pretty significant cost savings to the county with the new team in place, and that is sort of officially viewed by our insurance carriers as a reduction in risk, and that makes sense to me, and I'm glad we were able to save the taxpayers some money. So I'll be voting yes. Thanks.
Commissioner Carpenter, that was something like $122,000, was it not?
Yeah, it's a pretty sizable amount of money, and I'm glad we were able to do it. And with that, I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
2021-83 has been approved. That brings us to 2021-84. Mr. Administrator?
And Commissioners, 2021-84 is the actual act of approving the renewal of that insurance coverage through Travelers. The question last week was if the premium amount was correct, and I am able to now confirm that the premium amount of $2,060,877 is the correct number. And so as we approve this, it's an accurate number.
And we certainly appreciate the diligence of staff verifying all the numbers to make sure that we are correct. So with that, is there a motion related to 2021-84?
I'll make the motion to approve 2021-84.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2021-84. Discussion. Commissioner Carpenter?
Just will carry over my remarks from the last item. I think this is obviously this is necessary to do, and I'm proud of it. So I'll be voting yes. Thank you.
Is there any comment from anyone in the public? Seeing no comments, Commissioner Thompson, you are free to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
2021-84 has been approved. That brings us to 2021-82. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, 2021-82 is to approve a capital project encumbrance request, dollars, in other words, for a lease-to-own purchase of 4 2022 Mack tandem axle dump trucks, which would then include a trade-in of 4 2014 International dump trucks with Westfall GMC Truck Incorporated. This is a highway request, and Highway is here to add additional comments.
Please proceed.
Good evening, Commission. Carl Walters, Deputy County Administrator. 4 tandem axle trucks that we're in the purchase of for a 5-year lease program that we've been running for several years. We're trading in 2014 trucks. Bring this to you because if we don't get on the list, we're the last inviting people to get on the list, or we won't get trucks for another year into April. After April 1st, the surcharge on metal and electronics will also go up. They're not sure what the percentage will be, but these trucks here have averaged in cost of somewhere around $20,000 in repairs to radiators, coolers, transmissions, things that are starting to affect these trucks since, the rough snow, the weather and stuff, take a toll on all these vehicles. They don't have a lot of miles on them, but they take a beating. So we bring these to you so we can get those out of the way, keep the repairs down, and get 4 more new.
Excuse me. Thank you very much. Is there a motion related to 2021-82?
I move that we approve 2021-82.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2021-82. Discussion. Commissioner Thompson?
No, thank you, Commissioner.
Is there anyone from the public who would care to comment on this particular item? Seeing none, Commissioner Carpenter, you're free to close.
Thank you. It seems like a good thing to do, and I appreciate our highway director for his remarks. And I close. Thank you.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
2021-82 has been approved. That brings us to the last item on our regular agenda. That would be 2021-87. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, 2021-87 is to approve an annual lease agreement with the Wymore family for the Jesse James Bank Museum. It's a renewal that April the 1st, again, is a critical date, and Parks Facilities is here to speak to that.
Please proceed.
Good evening, Donna Kuntz, Facilities. Yes, Commissioners, this is, we just finished a 3-year lease period that was allowed us for 3 years, or 1 year with up to 3-year renewals, and that period has now expired. So this would allow us to write a new lease with the Wymore family and continue on for 1 more year, operating the James Bank Museum.
And that's right here in the immediate vicinity, is it not?
Yes, it is, just right off the square.
Is there a motion related to 2021-87?
Make the motion to approve 2021-87.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2021-87. Discussion? Commissioner Carpenter?
No, thank you.
Are there any questions or discussion from any members of the public? Seeing none. Commissioner Thompson, you are free to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
That concludes our regular agenda for tonight. Excuse me. That brings us to our comments section. These are comments on non-agenda items. These would be items that were not covered under our agenda as we have previously discussed. Are there any comments on non-agenda items from members of the public this evening? I see one gentleman making his way forward. If anyone else would care to make comment, please make sure that you line up behind the podium and that you observe the social distancing. Also, citizens who would like to comment, please remember to make sure the green light is on the collar of your microphone, and to state your name, and certainly try to speak clearly. Since we have masks, it makes it a little more difficult. So with that, please proceed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Oldebecken. It is my honor to mention a name that is dear to me and has been dear to people in this county for a long time. And that's the name of William Boydston. Today is his birthday. He was born in 1753. He was laid to rest in Fabian Cemetery in Gladstone, Clay County, in 1838. What is significant about him is that he survived. He and his family survived the War of Independence. And
Could you speak just a little bit more into your microphone?
Thank you.
There we go. Thank you.
just a couple points I'd like to make to recognize what he did for our country. As a young teenager, he was highly skilled with a rifle and experienced as a frontiersman, and was recruited early on in various campaigns, mostly with Native Americans and with General Washington's army. At age 15, he joined militias to help protect their families from various forces that were attacking them, British and their Indian Native American allies. At one point, he came to the aid of Daniel Boone, who was under attack at Morris Fort. He fought in the Battle of Point Pleasant in 1774, the Battle of Kings Mountain in 1780 under, these are interesting names, Colonel John Noah Jack Sevier, and harassed British Colonel Bannister Tarleton and General Cornwallis in 1780 while serving under Francis the Swamp Fox Marion. Oh, that's not all. While he was a soldier during the war, he got married, and they had their first child. Later, several families that had settled in Tennessee, far eastern Tennessee, decided that there were better fortunes and opportunities and for them west, in western Missouri. And his tombstone and a very nice memorial are in that cemetery. I'd like to read something that is, it's a poem. And I'm going to do double duty on this because it honors this man and people like him and his family, but also I just want to thank the clerk's office. They have been really outstanding in getting back with me. I know there's some things they can't control, but they have been on top of it. So thank you so much for all that you have meant to me, all of your help. This is Grandma Keating's poetry. I hope you enjoy it. Crossroads. Glasses back on. As I'm standing at the crossroads, all of the roads look might grim, and the chances that I might come out a winner look mighty dark and gray and slim. I vowed, and I'm most certain, that I've been down this road before, because these crossroads, they aren't new to me. Many times I've been sad and lonely and sore. God's hand has always been within reach, because friends, I've been down this road many times before. I have a couple of questions before I sit down. If I can find them. Oh, this is for the commissioners. Just a question related to the sunshine regulations. My question is, this question was asked of me, I don't know the answer. If someone is to be in a meeting like this, a public meeting, and there's a document they request, the records custodian is here, would you consider it a legal request under 610 if it is verbal and it's made in this meeting?
I think, excuse me, I'm going to defer to council on that, but before we do, I think I would like to, and invite the other commissioners to comment if they would like to on the previous presentation. And that was, it's very kind of you to share that piece of history of Clay County as we enter into our bicentennial. I think we're all going to be finding a lot more about our county than we had known previously, so I appreciate you bringing that forward to us. Commissioner Carpenter?
I, of course, agree, and Mr. Olebecken and I have had an opportunity to talk about some of the history of Clay County and celebrating it as we go forward in the bicentennial, and I think right here in Liberty, Missouri, I think you'd agree is a good place to have that celebration. So.
Couldn't be better.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Commissioner. No, I think with the bicentennial coming up, it's going to be a lot of excitement going on here in Clay County. And Jim, always I enjoy you coming up and giving us some kind of words of wisdom. And I always enjoy speaking with you. So yeah, thank you very much.
I'm just trying to get my head into that stuff because I think there's some good stuff back there we can benefit from.
Mr. Counselor, I believe the question that the citizen posed was one that was of a legal nature, and you seemed the best qualified to address it.
So I think the preferred practice would be for a written request so that it can be reviewed by council, and if there's any questions related to any document as far as any of it needing to be redacted or anything, it would give us a chance to review prior to just immediately handing over any documents kind of on the spot, if I understood your question correctly.
Oh, it's really simpler than that. I understand that. I use those forms. That's the only way to go. I think it's considerate of the staff to do that. I'm comfortable with that. Some people are, other people aren't. Some people, the question that was asked of me is that would they respond? And I think I'm thinking if it was done verbally, if somebody came, and asked for a document, or it came up during the talk, would the county feel obligated to respond to it as a valid document request under the Sunshine Law 610?
My guess would be, and correct me if I'm overstepping, Counselor, and that would be, if say you were to request a document of some sort, staff would, depending upon the circumstance, and if the offices were open, would try to provide you at the earliest possible moment with the form and help you fill it out, and then we could proceed with processing. Does that sound about right, Counselor?
Yeah, that's basically what I was alluding to, is that it wouldn't be ignored, but we would still want it to go through the normal process.
That's not my question. It was, would it be considered by you to be a legal request, a valid request under sunshine that you're obligated to respond to like any other request, if some person prefers to do it that way? That's my question.
And again, we'd prefer that it go through the normal process with the written request, so that we have it for our own records as well.
I understand you prefer, but that wasn't my question. I'll move on. Let's see. Last week I had a question related to 2021 ORD 01F, which has to do with a amendment, a workaround related to a perceived issue with voting, in as much as the presiding is not permitted under the Constitution to vote. Now, here's the kind of chain of custody of my question. I came early, I presented it to somebody, one of the commissioners, and then council asked me if I could stay afterward, which the meeting went too long. I emailed council with the very same question, and the response I got, I can provide it to you, was, as I've told you before, it's not my job to comment on legislation. So I'm going to rewind to my question. But this time I'd just like to ask the commissioners, those that voted, not the presiding, but both of you voted, and our confidence is that you understand this sufficient to explain its meaning. So question one on that would be, for either of you, what is the meaning of paragraph F relative to the voting, which was amended after 06, and why did you support it, or why did you vote for it?
Before we get into that, it might be a thought if you have the text with you, because while we obviously do read our ordinances and resolutions, it might be helpful for commissioners to have the text of it in front of them so that they can respond.
I'll see if I do.
Well, yeah.
Unless you
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I think we discussed on this last week, and what I expressed to you at the time is still my position, which is that I wasn't overly thrilled with the idea of treating abstentions as a no vote, or absences as a no vote. It does feel different than the way it's normally done. The way it was presented to me is because we have the new county constitution, with the presiding commissioner not voting except in the case of a tie. And with that piece of the new constitution going into effect immediately, whereas the 7-person change doesn't go into effect immediately, that there would be recurring circumstances, potentially, in which with only 2 commissioners voting, if you had 1 absence or 1 abstention, that it could present a challenge to the normal proceedings of the commission. And so I made the judgment, you can disagree with the judgment, of course, that is your right, but I made the judgment that presented with what I felt were essentially 2 bad options, I picked what I felt was the lesser of the 2 bad options. Whether or not it is, some legal challenge could be brought to it, I don't know. If somebody were to do that, then it could be addressed that way. I don't know, I don't have any history with treating abstentions as a no vote. Certainly in my experience in Jefferson City, that was not the case, right? And I am not aware of it being the case, frankly, in any other jurisdiction. It doesn't mean that it's not. I'm just not aware of it. So that's why I voted yes on it.
Let me clarify the question. I was asking about 01 and the change relative to 06, because 01, paragraph F, amended 06, which amended the provisions in the Constitution, effectually about voting. So, I mean, this is my problem. This is the confusion. There was an '06, which I worked hard on to get my arms around that, but then the wording changed in '01. Remember? You voted on that, '01, February 11th. I wasn't there. But that's what I'm after. What happened between '06 and '01? It was 1 week apart.
So the only thing that happened from my perspective and my
Yeah.
point of view was that in the week between the two, that concern was brought to me, right? So when I voted the first time, it was not on my radar that that was a potential situation. Frankly, it was my assumption coming into the new commission that the presiding commissioner would be voting, okay?
Right.
So I didn't think that that part of the Constitution would kick in until 2023 when we had a 7-person commission.
Right.
And I think, like I said last week, in a perfect world, that is how the Constitution would have been written. I didn't have any part in writing the Constitution, as you know. So it was, that's the only change that happened, was that it wasn't on my radar on the first vote. It was brought to my attention in the week in between. And then I believe it was county council who suggested the change. I thought about it. I asked them questions such as, like we discussed last week, are there other examples of this happening, that sort of thing. And then ultimately we moved forward with it.
That doesn't surprise me. It's just that I still don't have an answer to why it changed. And because we're swapping out commissioner with associate commissioner in 2 instances, but not all 4. I don't want to beat it up too much, but I guess it's just, I'm leaving it, I'd like to leave it as an open item. I believe that everyone in this room should be able to explain it simply. I mean, it should be a simple thing, and we just don't know what it is. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know how to explain it. I hardly know how to ask the question. But definitely the people that vote on it should be able to stand alone, articulate what happened.
Do you feel like I haven't articulated it? Because I will try again if you want me to.
Pardon?
Do you feel that I have not articulated it?
How has the meaning of '01 changed from '06? There were words that were changed. I don't know why it was changed. I don't know. We're mixing the word commissioner, which applies to 3, with. See, we don't have to keep going on it. I'm just letting you know where I'm at. I don't
I
understand it.
understand. I agree it's overly convoluted, and I wish it weren't the case, right? I wish, as I've said now several times, I wish that we weren't treating abstentions as no votes. I wish that we weren't having a new constitutional framework in which we've only got 2 votes happening every week instead of 3. I think having 3 would be preferable.
Yeah.
So in terms of getting an easy to explain, I agree that this was essentially a workaround and was a fairly convoluted workaround in order to try to resolve what was a 2-year predicament here in between the implementation of the Constitution going to 7. But I'm not sure what to do about it, what you would want me at this point, or Commissioner Thompson or Commissioner Nolte, to do. And if you have a recommendation, I'm happy to hear it.
I'd like to know what it looks like, how it works going forward. The simplest thing, which we don't have, would be we only have 3 people. A majority is 2 out of the 3. And if one's gone, if all 3 are voting, one cannot vote due to one of those circumstances. You got 2 left. So, but, I'll just leave it as, I think it's an open concern in terms of the difficulty to understand and communicate it to other people, or maybe it's just me. And then secondly, I don't know that I'm comfortable with where the bright line is between observing something that's not sufficient in the Constitution, it didn't go far enough, it's not what we want, something changed. How far can we go with ordinances to change something that's covered in the Constitution? Because, as I mentioned last time, the Constitution itself prevents its amendment. So, we can move on. I think that's just something. Well, would somebody like to address how far can we go with ordinances relative to things in the Constitution without violating 18R, its own provision, to wait till the appropriate general election to make a change?
Well, I think it's a reasonable question. I think I've said my piece on it. If
Okay.
the other two commissioners want to jump in, they are certainly welcome to do so.
Jim, I'll tell you that honestly, with that, I had the same concerns you did when I
Okay.
first looked at this, and we
I
spoke about
remember you
this
said that.
last week. And so when I sat down and spoke with county council and the verbiage that was in there, that is why that other portion of the amendment was included. It's so then no associate commissioner would feel boxed in, so then we could bring up these issues at the next meeting and have our voice heard. So I understand there was no other, we couldn't come up with another way. I couldn't figure out another way. And the issue with how far can we go with changing our ordinances to address issues within the Constitution, I was going off guidance from county council. So that really would be something we would have to address with them and just kind of see. And I know we weren't really changing the Constitution. We were simply changing how we can just do meetings, because that did seem to be just of a small glitch that was overlooked when that was previously written.
I think I'd like to also add, in spite of the fact, as you pointed out, I did not vote, but if I were voting, I would have found myself voting with the two associate commissioners on this. The question as far as how far do we go in the future on this, I think we've got two things that are limiting, so to speak, on this. One would be that we are in a transition period, so I think that we have a limited timeline in which these kinds of issues would present themselves. I think secondarily, you've got I think a commission, I certainly feel confident in the associate commissioners, that they, and as you've heard from the process they went through in making their decision, is not something that they took lightly. And I think one of the really great safeguards is the fact that both the associate commissioners took that vote very seriously, thought it through in a very serious manner. And then, of course, finally, the ultimate protection against going too far on that is the fact that we are opening our meetings up to the extent, and that we, and I would not say we allow you to speak, because that's wrong. We welcome you to speak.
Yes, you do.
Allowing you to speak somehow implies that we should have the ability to not allow you to speak. And I think as long as I think the three of us are sitting here, I think we will welcome comments from citizens. So that is our ultimate guarantee that there will be limits on what would be done in the future. And I don't anticipate any between now and the 2-year implementation of the Constitution myself, but who knows the future.
Oh, just one more thing. Just an idea. This was brought up to me. I think it has merit, would be providing a link to be able to view all ordinances on the county website. It may be there. I've looked for it. But if it's not, I thought, maybe that would be a good way to, that would reduce the number of times people would ask for an ordinance from the clerk. Thank you for your time very much.
Well, thank you very much for participating. Are there any other citizens who would like to comment on any other non-agenda items? Seeing none, are there any office holders who would like to comment on items not on this evening's agenda? I see none. Are there any persons here from any other agencies who would like to comment on any items that were not on tonight's agenda? That would conclude the comments on non-agenda items. That brings us to County Administrator comments. Mr. Administrator, if you would like to proceed.
I would. Commissioners, this morning I had the pleasure of spending some time at our Highway Department location between here and Kearney. And my comment to you is you should feel very proud of that group, led by Deputy Administrator Walters. It's a very well-organized, very efficient, very aptly supported a group of folks that, if you think about it, are on duty 365 days a year, pretty much 24 hours a day, depending on the weather at the time. And they've got an awful lot of acreage and square miles and footprint to take care of, and they've got the equipment necessary to do it. You should feel good about that. They're well-staffed. They're very smart, very efficient people. And I just think you should be very proud of your highway department and the work they do. And I enjoyed the time I spent up there with them this morning.
Thank you very much. That brings us to commissioner comments. I'll go ahead and lead off and then go to the other two commissioners. I would just like to echo and make an observation about what the administrator said, and that is, most of us, when the weather gets nasty enough, we have snow days. I don't believe you get snow days in the in that particular area of government, do you? Well, actually, they're called overtime. In any case, I would like to pass on word from the Missouri Extension. I was participating in their meeting Tuesday night. They would like to express their appreciation for the funding that we voted in this year's budget that would go to help fund the programs that they do. Missouri Extension obviously is tied to the state of Missouri. They are a great asset to our community, and they do a lot of good work. On the subject of boards and commissions, something that I would like to make sure that everybody's aware of, and I certainly want to make sure that the associate commissioners are aware of, is that with the departure of the other two commissioners, there are vacancies and there are places where we need to have commissioners on boards and commissions. Actually, the Missouri Extension is one. I've served 2 terms on that particular body, and I would, I think it was something that any commissioner would enjoy and would certainly profit from as far as understanding our county. But I just want to make sure that there's a realization that we do have vacancies and that there's going to be some reorganizations, and our administrator has done a good job of assembling a list of some of those opportunities, and I think it would be a great thing if we could go forward and start looking at how we would fill those that we as commissioners would participate in through the Mid-America Regional Council and other organizations. So thank you, Mr. Administrator, for putting together that list, and we will hopefully be able to take advantage of those opportunities with the other entities around us. Commissioner Carpenter?
Thank you. No additional comments at this time.
Commissioner Thompson?
No comment now. No, thanks.
Very good. Approval of minutes. We have before us the minutes of March 10, 2021, 6 p.m. If commissioners would like to take a moment to review them one more time, I would certainly entertain a motion for the approval of those minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes from Wednesday, March 10, 2021.
Motion has been made for the approval of the March 10, 2021, 6 p.m. minutes. Discussion? Commissioner Thompson? Commissioner Carpenter, you are recognized to close.
Thank you. I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
Are there any written reports to come before the commission at this time?
None today.
Very well. There are none. Executive sessions. We have no executive sessions listed this evening. That brings us to adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.